I'm just going to turn this music off.
All right, cool. I think you're doing the intros first, Mike. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. So welcome to this webinar, which is Reimagine the Future of the Workplace. Welcome to everyone who's joining and who's to our great panelists. From the 1980s, which is where I'm kind of from. I was born in the 70s, but I grew up really in the 80s, but it's changed. The workplace has really changed. My initial, where we were working in the 80s and 90s has really changed. And in the last year or so, it's changed a considerable amount. So this is all about the workplace and what changes are coming. Just a few housekeeping notes. If you want to have a better experience, update your Zoom application. The audience, if you're online at the moment, we can't hear you, so everyone's muted. So use the chat panel if you want to do anything, or you can jump into the Q&A section and ask a question there, and we'll try to answer that at the end. A recording of this is happening at the moment, and we'll share that after this event. So to anyone who is attending or anyone who logs in late, we'll send out a recording after. And yeah, just remember to put any questions that you want, and we'll try and answer them as we get through. Let's begin. We really hope that you can learn something from this and move on. Obviously, we're talking about things like the home office versus our office. Being in the office is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Being at home is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Yeah. We're also talking about whether we should just jog along and just keep doing the same thing we've always done, or whether we should go through a full transformation into the new ways of working. We've got some really wonderful panelists on. My name is Michael Lobb. I'm the Managing Director of TeamScale, and I'll be facilitating the event. I won't say hosting. Hosting today is Anthony Bowers from Talent Asia. And he runs a resourcing company based in the Philippines, based in Cebu in the Philippines. Yeah. Lucy Falconer, who is our resident expert in people, and I'm losing my notes here. Sorry, I'm just going to go through them, try and get through them. There we go. Who is our resident expert in coaching and making sure that people are up to date with what things are happening and change. Jessica Schubert, who is from where are you from, Jessica? Sorry.
I'm the founder of InTech Teams.
InTech Teams, that's right. Yeah, I did have
about the names. I'm from Germany, but dialing in from Melbourne. So I help lead us through immense change. And I'm about to publish my book, Lead the Change. So hopefully I can share some good skills today.
And Peter Black, who's from Axiom, who is an expert in our workplaces and how they're designed. Peter, do you want to give us the 20-second intro?
Yeah, I'm an architect by training, and I've been in the workplace industry designing workplaces for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some really big changes in that 30 years. Yeah. I've worked in the United States for a long time, Southeast Asia and in London, and designing workplaces in all those places. And I've found that there's a couple of big inflection points, probably in the 2000s with mobility, and I think we're in the middle of one right now as a result of COVID.
And Lucy, I forgot to let you do a short introduction. I'm sorry, I just was racing through my notes. Yeah.
So I'm Lucy Faulkner, and I'm a leadership coach, and I work with teams in terms of the leadership, in terms of culture, and helping them increase their performance and their effectiveness while thriving doing it. So all this conversation today, that they can actually thrive while they are going to the work and interacting with others. So that's me. And I'm from Chile, and I've been here for 4.5 years. In Australia.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, we do have quite a diverse bunch, Germany, Chile, New Zealand. My mum's English. I don't know if that counts.
Australian.
Australia. All around the world.
After today's webinar, we are giving away a whole lot of stuff. So stick around. We've got an hour digital transformation session from TeamScale where Anthony from Talent is giving away 50% off his first invoice, and that's for existing customers too. So if you're on the webinar and you want to apply for that, then you'll get an opportunity at the end.
Yep.
Lucy will be giving one lucky winner being profile assessment, which is very valuable. And Axiom, Peter, will be giving away a free workplace assessment. And we'll also be raffling off 10 of those new books that you've got. So,
right.
So that's amazing. And yeah, we'll be doing that at the end of the webinar. So stick around and we'll talk about that then. Okay, here we are.
We've got the screen, Pac-Man. I absolutely love that. Michael,
to you, Anthony, to continue.
Thank you very much. That was great. Thanks for the introduction. So let's get into it. I mean, where to start? I had a really interesting thing happen the other day, and I was in an online panel, and it was great. And we were talking about small businesses and technology and the changes. And I happened to make a point that I was actually pleasantly surprised about how things had worked so well in the Philippines with people working from home, because I had thought that it was really going to be quite terrible, which is, I don't know if I should have felt that, but it hasn't been. Things have worked. And I got a pretty strong reaction from one of the other panelists that their experience was very different. And it made me think about remote work. And if we could start maybe with Jessica, some people's experience of remote work has been fantastic. Right? They love it. Others, and I read about this the other day, for example, with the rates of domestic violence have been going up. That obviously is a very bad experience for that person. I'm just wondering how, as companies, we can make sure that our staff are getting the best experience they possibly can with remote work, and what your thoughts are on that.
Well, it's interesting, Anthony, right? Because I find, especially in Australia, where, we're going in and out of change, and ultimately the workplace has changed. We're not going back to, the office, and people don't want to go back to an office. And I think there's two sides: organizations struggling at the moment to, create what really works, because we just don't know. They're also worried about productivity and certainly mental health, and individuals, experience what's happening right now differently. Everyone experience a crisis or, pandemic, or their personal life differently.
Right.
And, and their choice, if they're, some of them, some people enjoy working from home or the hybrid, and some don't. Yeah. So not everyone has, a big house with a room that can be converted to an office and that works.
Yeah.
And not everyone has kids at home to homeschool when the crisis is on. So I think it's really, really complex. And I think we have to be mindful that at all of this, the human being has to be, right at the center of this. But we also have to create workplaces that enable people to, work well. We're talking about productivity. Most people that I talk to say, actually, I've been more productive, but it comes at a high cost working from home now, because people go, what the comment I get most from leaders at the moment, and I work with them online, they're 2 minutes late and they're like, sorry, I've just come from the back of my last meeting. Yeah. So people are in end-to-end, Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
Not so very productive. Workload has doubled, hours haven't. So I think organizations doing reasonably well in looking at well-being, having well-being programs, and enabling their leaders to have the right conversations, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah. And I think there's workplace, should we go back to the office or not? And then looking after the people we have, no matter where they work.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I'll double back on that about the technology with workplace wellness and how we're looking at productivity and such. Lucy, how about yourself with your clients and who you're talking to? How's COVID been for them, and what are you seeing out there as far as remote work?
think it, as you were saying, Jessica,
Or
it
office
depends
work.
so much. Yeah, it depends so much in the reality of each individual, each industry. When we think of Australia versus Chile, for example, or the States, we're talking about totally different worlds, what they've been through with COVID, what we've been through. So really what I'm seeing at the moment is organizations having the conversations around what has actually worked, what got better since we started working from home, you know, what actually are the things that we don't miss about the office, but having those conversations and big organizations at least giving their teams, their individual teams, the possibility to discuss what works for them. So yes, giving them some guidelines and giving them the resources for them to structure some kind of going back to the workplace, but giving autonomy to the team so they can really understand, one, the individual, what the individual needs are. So for example, you live away from, you know, far away from the office, or you have small kids. Do you have a partner or not? It depends. So many factors. So the individual, what they need, then what the team needs in terms of how do they need to work together to solve the complex problems, what are the things that they can do from home, and that will be different depending of the industry, the company, and then also just having those conversations at an organizational level around, okay, what are the things that we need to put in place that to make sure that the effectiveness, the running of the business is still there. So I think those three levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of complexity, isn't there? And there seems to be a change in how, rather than a one size fits all, as in the office, where there's a more nuanced approach. Peter, how about you when you're talking to your companies? I mean, Axiom's big on workplaces and workplace strategy. This must be a fascinating time for you.
Well, it absolutely is, and as I said before, I think it's a bit of a pivot point in workplace. I'm going to talk about stuff that's based on literally hundreds of interviews over the last 6 months with different organisations, a really diverse group of organisations, and I think one of the things that have come out really strongly is the mentoring issue, that it's really, really difficult over virtually. And just the simple things about when you think back in your own situation, you've probably learnt a lot by overhearing people who are more experienced than you. And they gave the opportunity of coaching you as well, saying, you know, if there was a difficult situation and you handle it badly, for example, at home, what do? You go and kick the cat or the dog sort of thing, or you in the office, you have your neighbour or your boss close by saying, well, listen, I've been through that before, don't worry about it. That was a situation, you handle it well, or you would do something differently to handle that situation. So that part of work is completely missing working from home. And it's very, very difficult to do it via Zoom or, you know, Microsoft Teams, etc. So that'd be one big thing I'd say is a big issue with the way of working now.
Can I bring that up? Because I think that's a really important point. Now, of course, I'm slightly biased because I'm all about remote work, but I'm a mixed bag, Peter, in that even though I love remote work and you know, everything remote, I'm also a huge fan of working in the office. I know that sounds weird, but it's just who I am. I love working in the office. And it's also, you're quite right, Lucy and Jessica, it's about what is the environment at home. Well, I've got a 16-year-old teenage boy, right, who's now being homeschooled. And, you know, I love getting out of the house when I can, and as much as I adore him. So how do we provide that sort of mentorship? Because I agree. I think it's very, very hard to replicate those, you know, I think we'd call them chance collisions, would it be?
Yeah.
You know, those chance moments.
Well, look, I think the thing that you do is you start looking at the workplace not as a place to actually do your formal work, you know, write reports or stuff like that, but it's a place to make those connections and be mentored and, you know, purposely go to a particular place to have those sort of connections. Because I've got a 17 and 18-year-old children as well. My son in particular is really good at sitting in front of his computer all day and connecting with people, and my daughter too. Maybe that's a generational thing, that if you grow up in this sort of situation, you can get those connections. I've got my doubts about it when you can't start coming to formal work, having your boss connecting in the same way that you connect with your mates on the gaming is a different sort of situation. Maybe we'll evolve something that can work like that, but at the moment I think physical connections, being in the same place at the same time, is really important.
Yeah, we've found those group chats that happen. I mean, we keep either Slack or Hangouts or whatever chat tool you're using. We keep a general room open where people just talk about what they're doing and things like that, and that helps to build those connections. But you're right, being in the same, standing by the same water cooler doesn't really necessarily.
Yeah,
help.
I mean, the 5-minute chat that ends up being into an hour discussion doesn't happen if you have to formally schedule it.
That's a very interesting point. Jessica, you're remote teams, and intact teams. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it comes back to some of the basics of leadership, but we have to put a real lens on it. I totally agree with Michael that we have to somehow use technology to assimilate the water cooler conversation. This, hey, can I bring you into this meeting? Can I look over your shoulder? Or as Peter said, I've been in that situation. So the, ad hoc, conversations that we don't have at the moment, but technology enables us. So great to hear what works, with Slack channels and so on and so forth. But just remember that not everyone is the same. Not everyone has the same buy-in, especially your introverts and people who work in isolation, like working in isolation. They're not naturally prone to do this. So I find, and I explain this in my book as well, some of our leadership skills haven't changed. If anything, we need to flex that muscle. And it's all about having the conversation, having the emotional intelligence to be able to tap into people and really know what's going on. It's not just technology. I think technology, conversations, relationship, and leadership, it all comes together. We have to be really mindful and have set an intention, but we also have to upskill, and develop our leaders to be able to lead teams. And Lucy, you saw those 3 levels as well. So it actually happens, and it starts with having your 3 to 4 levels of conversations, water cooler conversations, more of a formal, but how are you going check-in per week, and then your really formal sit downs, and draw in the whole team as well. But the basic skills are being able to have the conversation, ask open questions, having a coaching approach, and using emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean,
that's really important right now.
Look, it is, and Lucy, we'll go to you in just a tick. But I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate. I think all those things can be done remotely. That's just me, right? And again, completely biased. And I want to get into that in a minute as well, because I think this idea about the workplace and people working in an office, there's also a lot of very influential people and companies have a lot of vested interest in people getting back to the office. And I'd like to get into that, Peter, not giving away too much, as I understand some of them are probably your clients. Lucy, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, can we get to the stage of mentoring and leaning in with, as Jessica was saying, emotional intelligence and leadership? Can that be done remotely, or is there no way that can be possibly ever match a physical connection? And I don't know the answer. I have no idea.
Given the work I do, like, my perspective is that absolutely, but you've got to be intentional. It's if you're going to go responding to what's urgent, what fills your calendar is going to be filled by the work. What do you need to do? What are the projects? And you're going to get invited to a whole lot of meetings, but you've got to be intentional around where you're spending your time. So if it's important, those conversations with your team, how are you organizing even your calendar, just color coding? So you make sure that you're having those conversations with each individual in your team, or you're going and bringing them all together. Even those Zoom calls where you would have a drink on a Friday afternoon, those are things that we know that we can create, and being intentional about putting them in place. And also, just you touched on it before, Peter, if you're going to be in the office, what for? Like, how are you going to make it attractive so people go into the office and they actually have a reason to be there, that because there's something that they can't do at home. So for example, the dynamics, you're going to solve a complex problem, but you know that if you're all sitting in the same room together, it's going to be a better result. And how you going to make it attractive for people. So you know, for example, a friend works in Instagram in the US, and they've made this amazing building that is so attractive. Everyone wants to be there because they have free food, really good restaurants in it. Of course, it doesn't apply to each organization, but you can create a small version of that, of saying, okay, when we're all in the office, we have a morning breakfast. We all sit together and have that time where it's worth going in, because if not, you miss out on something.
Yeah, making it worthwhile. That's very important. And talking about worthwhile, this is to people that are listening in. You know, we want this to have value for you, this talk. I think it's fascinating anyway, but please, if there are things that you want us to talk about, if there are things that you want to hear, if there are takeaways that you want from the webinar, feel free to put it in the Q&A.
Chat window, yeah, because the chat window is open, as well as the Q&A. One of the things that I've realized is different levels of stress have been caused by this change in the last year or so. I'm going to launch a poll right now, so everyone on the webinar can you know, just say whether your stress levels have increased or decreased. But I think that's something that we can probably talk through as well.
Can I respond?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you can talk about it if you want. You're actually on.
Let's see.
I mean, for me, my stress levels go down when I'm at home because I've got my dogs around and I don't need to be in a meeting. And I'm one of those people who like to work and focus on something and not be disturbed. But when you're in the office, you're putting yourself out there to be disturbed. And I think that's sort of what you were saying before, Peter, is, you know, when you're intentional about going into the office and making sure that something is there to happen when you're there, then that's really important.
I'd say something else about that, about just the nature of work. I think has changed a lot. You know, when I first started off in the industry, there was a lot of people doing process work. We're basically sitting at a desk all day doing stuff, entering data, or, you know, processing things. And that's pretty much been eliminated from, at least in Australia. So the workforce has really changed in their character and their makeup of being much more focused on creative thought, you know, finding solutions, those sort of things. So it's gone from all of those sort of everyday tasks have been outsourced or replaced by AI, or if not, you know, 90% there. So really the workplace is a place where you do creative or innovative work. And from my experience working in the creative industry for all of my career, it's almost impossible to be creative by yourself in some ways, unless you're
that's a good point.
For a complex problem, unless you're an artist who is in a loft somewhere. But most work that we do is not like that. It's trying to create solutions with a diverse group of people, a diverse group of thinkers, and that really does work best when you're in the same environment, in my opinion. It's really difficult to do it in a formal setting over a Zoom meeting, because you need to be able to have freedom of thought and freedom of, you know, no constraints in a way. Whereas a Zoom meeting is very constrained about how you conduct it and the outcome of it. You know, it's time constrained, it's technology constrained. So I think that, I mean, there definitely is a demand for workplace for that sort of work.
Yeah, agree. On the poll, most people, 58% have said that their stress levels have increased some. Another 18% very, very increased, which is, you know, very high. And there's also a few of us whose stress levels have decreased working from home. So that's good to see.
Yeah. That's great. And look, we do have a couple of Q&As, Michael. Now, when do you want me to talk about them? Or are we leaving that to the end?
We can talk through them now. So JB asked, what are the tricks you've found to fight isolation of remote workers? Isolation is a big thing. And
Yep.
Anthony, you're probably in that situation with your team in the Philippines. You're the one who's isolated. How does it?
Yeah, it's right, and not by choice, right? So I was back here, and this is one of the great difficulties of the last couple of years. Is I was here to attend the accounting and finance show, and with all intention of heading back up to Hong Kong and Cebu, and here I am 2 years later. You have to use the tools that are at hand, and I think we might maybe have a look at that, or some specific things that we're doing. I think JP was it JP? Was it the JB? Sorry, was asking about what tools we're using. Well, there's the obvious things that like Slack. I have been seeing other technology recently that is really interesting. So technology around really gauging the feelings and the well-being of staff. I think there was one called Lean Mote. I forget what it was. I think it's leanmote.com. That was interesting. And that was one of a couple of tools that I've seen about remote workforces. I don't know if anyone else is using other things. And just before I forget, when we're discussing about the ways that we collaborate physically, I have seen the technology starting to catch up. And what I mean by that is that I was at an event put on by a company called Cascade, I think it was, and the technology behind it was called AirMeet, I think. And it was the first time when I went, wow, this is actually enjoyable. I've enjoyed this online event because, again, I'm big on remote working. I prefer physical events. But they see
the big thing that we're hearing from all those interviews I talked about before is people wanting a much better integration of the virtual and the physical.
Okay, so a hybrid.
Hybrid sort of thing where maybe 8 people out of a 10-person team can attend physically, and try to integrate the 2 people that attend virtually doesn't really work that well now for most workplaces.
Got it.
And I think there's a great opportunity for technology to improve that.
Yeah. I mean, I particularly like this one, but just because it's me, I enjoy the networking, and this thing had this sort of this carousel networking thing where you were like, boom, meeting someone, 3 minutes.
Oh, right.
Boom,
swipe left, swipe right.
Swipe left, swipe right. It was Bumble. It was like boom, 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 boom. Right? And I loved it because that's just my nature. I enjoy that stuff. And I'm throwing it out to the panel. Do you like any tech tools that you're using? We're talking about leadership and being able to lean in and stuff like that. What about some specifics of what we're using? Yeah, Mike, Jessica.
Is there any outside of the tech tools? Are there any tools that you can use with people? And I guess Lucy and Jessica, you probably might be able to answer this, but I mean, transparency is one of the things that I try to talk about a lot when dealing with my team, and being honest and open with everybody. How do you get that as an organization, as a culture?
You see?
It's a big question, because how do you get that in terms of the remote working, do you mean? Like with people working from home? When
people are working remotely, I find that there are some areas where people will stay in their own lane and not communicate as well as they do in the office. And I'm just wondering if there's any tools that you've had in your toolbox to say this is how you do that, or how you train that into the people that you've got in your organization.
I think what we spoke about.
It is a big question, yeah.
Because it really depends on what works and what doesn't work. So what's the result that you need, and what is the cost that it's having if they are not providing you with the information, if they are isolating? So if it's a kind of work where that's okay, then you don't need to do anything about it. But if it's impacting a goal that you've got, if it's impacting the rest of the team, then that's a conversation you need to have. And you state it like that. You say, this way that you're showing up with the team isn't working because this is the impact that we're seeing. So then you create a solution that goes and tries to fix that problem. You don't try and fix the person and make them be different in terms of if they are someone that works better isolated, what do they need to start putting in place so that it doesn't impact the rest of the team? So for me, it's that question around what works, what doesn't work, depending on the goals of the dynamics that you need to have as a team and as a business.
For me, it's sort of, a real opportunity. And I want to put a little bit of positivity in this as well. We're talking doom and gloom and, there's so much change. But hey, we are at an inflection point of creating the workplace of the 21st century and a workplace that helps us to lead really well and do amazing things in the next 10 years, right? The way we work, look at how we're going in and out of lockdowns. We just said, when we had a chat initially, uncertainty, not planning into the future is what stresses people out the most. But here's the thing, this is how we're going to work over the next, little while. And I think it doesn't matter how big your organization is, because the organization also breaks down into, smaller departments and teams, is recreate, have a really good look at your purpose, and co-create the purpose. Purpose for employees means they want to connect to it and they want to know how they are part of it. So when we talk about, how do we work remotely? How do we create new workplaces? As in office space. I know, Peter, you would talk a lot of organizations who downsize and want to redesign the office space. What's the purpose? I had a very interesting conversation with my partner the other day. He works for a large engineering firm and they're looking at recreating the office. They're like, how can we entice people to come back? And I said, look, just having a new office space, transferring all your desks over and have a nifty app to book your desk for the next day is not going to cut it. It's just office. You need to talk to everyone in the organization. So Peter, as you said, have a good mix of people, not just the executives, and ask them what they want. Why would you want to come back? I said, you have all this innovation going on. Why not looking at having an innovation center right at the heart of the office? And your younger engineers to have an insight into what you're doing. There's no point of all the executives sitting at home in their villas in Turak, saying they all live there, and you're trying to get young people to come in because you give out free soft drinks, right? It's not. So it's really about a purpose and co-creating the way we work, including the office space, but also how we want to work in teams and how we want to work with technology. I see this going wrong in many ways and right in a lot of ways. So Slack channels are amazing. Teams is amazing, but people don't even know where the information is anymore. So it's the organization's task and job to roll this out really well and be transparent, but also have really good guidelines about this, right? How do we use this stuff and what do you want to get out of it? We can't forget, we can't just implement things. We have to embrace technology, but we have to do it in a really clever way. Again, what's the intention there?
Absolutely. And I like the idea about how it does have to come back to what is the vision of the company, what is the purpose, what is I think the Japanese call it ikigai, is that right? I do like that. What is our reason for being? I think if you don't have that as a company, everything else, will fall by the wayside. I was a little bit distracted before because I was looking at, we're getting a ton of Q&As coming in. So I'm trying to go through them. So just very quickly, Sanjay asked, do you have any examples of how a leader could create an environment having fun remotely? Michael, I think you do this very well. You did your
we had our Christmas party online.
Christmas party where I got in trouble, if you remember.
We also have, sometimes we have a Friday night drinks at our desks, which is interesting.
At your desk, that's great. Any other ideas about having fun remotely? Or is it Friday drinks? Is that what you need to do across Zoom? I think we have
great games, I would say. Great games, right? and make it fun and say, okay, like I've heard teams that have decided to do a theme for the week, and they go on, this week we're all going to find out about a certain topic and bring it into our meetings, and this is what we're going to, or open up your meetings in a way that is creative, so everyone says something about what's the best thing that has happened that week for them, or or what is the one thing that they're missing from the office, whatever it is, but just bring in some dynamics, some games to the conversation.
Okay, I've got an agenda, I suppose, because I've spent my whole life making places for people not virtually. And I think for me, it sounds contrived in a way to do this rather than being spontaneous, which I think is the most important thing. That, I keep coming back to, there's a place for each, virtual and home, but there's always got to be a place for a place for people to get together.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to come to you, Peter, with the next question, where Caroline Hannaford has asked, could you please provide and discuss any current organizational case studies, and you don't have to name names, of what they're doing with their office solutions?
Well, I would say a really interesting one is a technology company we're working for now. They're in the finance sector. They closed down their physical office because their lease happened to be up. During in 2020, the first lockdown. Right. And they work remotely, and then they worked in a co-working space. And now they've decided after that experience, they've got to have a physical space.
Right.
Which is kind of completely against the grain in a way, completely against expectations. But they're convinced that they have to actually have a physical space to support their work and support their creativity and innovation. No, it's not as big as they had before, obviously, and it's a completely different sort of space they'll need, a more connecting space, a more innovation space, and managed around or curated around people, events and things for people to come into the office. Yeah. But very different what they had before, but it's still a physical space that they need.
Yeah, that's very interesting to bring that up, and what is the nature of that physical space? I mean, Lucy, we were talking about Instagram before. I mean, if you know the HR manager, let me know, because you had me at free meals and gourmet restaurants. Love it.
For me, it's bringing my dogs into work, but
Yeah, well, that's another one.
Well, hey, it's a fascinating thing, Peter, because if I remember, I've done a little bit of research, but I think IBM tried this back in the 90s. Where they had a big push for everyone to work at home, and it didn't work. And so they moved people back to the office. Is that a cultural thing, as Jessica was saying before? What is the culture of the company to allow these things to work, or is there a fundamental need for a physical presence, no matter what the company is?
I think there's always a need for a place to gather as people, whether it's social or whether it's for work. Or a blend of the both. And I just don't think we're wired to be completely virtual myself. I mean, you can't necessarily pick up body language or nuances like that by not having the physical presence. And again, I've got an interest in making places. So I think there always will be a place for a place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Lucy, Jessica, do you think there'll always be a need for a physical place somewhere, or do you think remote?
Look, it's really hard to say. I think, as you said, no size fits all, and there's, some great case studies from, companies like Atlassian and IBM. They work well just remotely. There really are, a whole range of options. And as an organization, you need to find the option that works for you. Some of these companies have worked just remotely for a long time. So their DNA is remote work. People buy into that. Yeah. But you also hear, Google is really struggling to keep people because they make, their employees coming back to the office because that's, what they do. But, it's really hard to say, either or. My personal opinion is, look at how people work best. Yeah. If it's for you, your employees and your clients are in the center of everything, right? So of course you need to achieve organizational goals, but how do you get there? Yeah. One thing that really helped me in the conversations I'm having, because my clients asking me, like, how can we entice people to come back to the office? Maybe not everyone, but how does this hybrid model work? Yeah, we want them to maybe 2-3 days. So this conversation is going on at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's a great model by Linda Gretton, and it's called the time and place model.
Right.
Because if you have a conversation with people and you get their buy-in, and they understand, okay, here's my job. Yeah. So it's all about jobs and tasks and looking at the critical drivers of productivity when it comes to time and place. Yeah. So if time and place is constrained, like frontline workers, it's the traditional, you have to come in. Yeah. Or if time and place is not constrained when it comes to critical drivers, then you can work anywhere, anytime. And I think you have to have different conversations with different people in the organization, because you'll have analysts, who can work completely remotely and isolated. They were just working to deadlines and happy for them to move into the country and, and work, against the clock and wherever and whenever they want. But other people need to maybe come into the office, like Peter said, collaboration, innovation, complex problem solving. These tasks are, are much more effective when people meet with each other. Yeah. So for a leader, a team leader, a department head, and an organization, to have conversations with each individual, depending on their job and task, critical drivers of productivity, through the time and place model, actually help to reason with your workforce to find a model that works. So 2 days in, 3 days out, a mix of things. There's about 5, 6, 7, 8 models. And you've got to find the one that works for you as an organization. That means you have to talk to your employees. And that's the work I do with my clients at the moment. And that's really to change.
Yeah, maybe that's the point, isn't it? I mean, I think that this remote environment is actually forcing companies to have conversations with their staff in a deliberate manner.
I think one of the messages on Nicholas mentioned there's a whole palette of workplaces in a way, which I agree with, that, the physical workplace where you can get together for those innovation sessions is one. You can have the coffee shop, home, maybe a local co-working space, etc. So there's a whole lot of different places that and virtual places that you can actually conduct work. And I'm not arguing with that at all, Nicholas, that we should be considering work that way. It's just if we're thinking about the physical office space, I think it's got to be a different sort of character than what it is now or what it traditionally has been.
All right, and I'm just a couple of questions here again on the Q&A. I'm trying to keep up with it. So Caroline Hannaford again, Peter, this is for you. That FinTech group, did they set their office back up in an office tower or some other type of low-rise building?
Sorry, what was that question?
The FinTech group you were talking about. I think you were talking about how they went completely virtual, then went physical. Back to physical. And the question is, what was the type of location? Is it in an office tower or is it in some other type of building?
Oh, they're actually looking right now, but the feeling is that we'll go into an alternative type space, not an office space, not like a traditional commercial high rise. It's more more comparable to a WeWork or a Christie's Spaces, as Nerida mentioned there, or those other type of co-working spaces that are more like that type of character space as opposed to a corporate space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated about what the future will bring, and I agree with Jessica that I think actually it could be very positive. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but gee, it's going to be different, right? So there are things like we are going to, we're talent as a company is going to have to invest in technology on monitoring the well-being of our staff, as in a sort of almost in a very fluid minute by minute thing. Like, what is the nature? How are you feeling today? Any problems that you want to know about, because we're not having that physical interaction to ask those questions. So we have to be a little bit more deliberate about it, which could be a good thing. Maybe companies being deliberately focused.
That's a tough thing as well, Anthony, because your staff in the Philippines probably don't want to necessarily talk about that. So there are cultural differences as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's got to be anonymous, I guess, right? Until they're talking.
I think we're at an opportunity for a much better future in a way if we seize the opportunity from a whole different sort of points of view of better quality of life, better impact on the environment and sustainability and climate change, better cities, more livable cities if we seize the opportunity of blending, having this hybrid approach where you don't necessarily have everybody commuting at 8:30 in the morning to a CBD and then back again. That's really got to stop, in my opinion.
Yes, and time's flying by, so we do have another poll, and I wanted to, like, when we finish off, is talk about, you know, what are some of the positive impacts that this is going to have, and we'll get there in just a minute. But I thought, Michael, it's time for our next poll.
This poll is, what's your primary device for working on? The reason this is in here is because I use a laptop. You know, I've always used a laptop, but there are people who prefer to take books around and write things down, which is really quite amazing. I've got a friend who mostly does all of his work on phone. He just carries his phone around everywhere and does most of his work there, which is amazing. I can't type on my phone very quickly. So yeah, it looks like laptop is the number one answer, quite staggeringly.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, we're not going to be able to have a mobile and fluid workspace unless we can pick up our laptop and carry that around with us. And would I be right to say that the laptop is the office now? Is that right? Or the most important component? I mean, what is this?
Well, you know what? I've got a client now that they don't have laptops. They have a setup in the office and a setup at home because people don't like carrying laptops on while they're commuting.
Oh, okay, nice.
Which is
incredible.
It's still the people, though. It's still the people that work on the laptop, and it's still the people that are on the phone, and the people that are having the conversations.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, absolutely. Just saw that results pop up. So the absolute majority is laptops, and that's not so surprising.
Anthony, you want to go into the future and the positives of this?
I do, and I want to talk to each of the panelists about it. Yeah, I can kick it off myself firstly. I mean, I just by nature know that remote working works. I know it because I've been doing it for years, and I see the really positive benefits. I also firmly believe that there needs to be a physical place for people to get together. So I'm a real contradiction there, that I work remotely. My business is about remote work, but I also am absolutely positively convinced that people need to get together in a physical space. So I think that the positive takeaway of this is that there is a more flexible, I was going to say hybrid, but I would say there's a more flexible approach by companies for their employees to try and get the best outcomes possible for everyone. And that, as I see, is a positive of this whole thing. Over to the panel. Who wants to rock up first? Yeah, Lucy. Yeah,
I think we're at a moment where we've got an amazing opportunity to be creative and to challenge things and to rethink. And as much as we're in this conversation, I notice we all want to know, okay, what's the best way? What is the one thing that's not there? It doesn't exist, and we want some kind of certainty around how it's going to look like. That's what we need to start shedding and letting go of, and really stepping into the vulnerability and the conversations where we can create something. And that's the opportunity that I feel that we have to open up what's possible and what really works, and to try new things and then look at them again and say, well, that didn't work, so what will? Because I know there's a lot of people that are trying things out there. You've heard of those rubber bands that say I'm vaccinated, or the t-shirt, and you think, you look in horror and say, hey, how could you think of that? But you're trying something new. So just try out, be creative with your teams, and whatever doesn't work, you just adapt and think of a better solution. But you're not going to get it if you don't shake it up and try new things.
Yeah, 100%. I really like that, and I absolutely agree with it. It's like, you give it a try, give it a go. doesn't work. I mean, plan it as best as you can and try and make sure that you get outcomes. We don't want to waste people's time, but you've got to give it a go, right? And whatever it is, try it and make sure you get really good feedback.
It's one of those rare instances where if you always do what you've always done, it won't actually work anymore. So,
well,
that's true.
The world has changed. There's no going back. And if you're trying to go back to something, then you're already on the wrong path because it's not there anymore.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I mean, we do have companies that are trying to get their staff to come back, aren't they? So I read, who was it? Was it Apple or someone was trying to, or Westpac or someone sort of mandating that you got to come back 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And friends that I've talked to have there are struggles at the moment, power dynamics between the employees and the companies about.
Well, yeah, we're hearing a lot where you've got to offer hybrid type work or working from home now as to be competitive.
Fascinating. So you're just not going to get people to work for your company if you're not offering a hybrid.
Correct. Yeah, that's almost everybody we talk to is saying that.
Yeah.
Could I just say something though? That I reckon we're in an opportunity now where we are at an inflection point in the way we work, and it has the opportunity. There's a huge opportunity here to do something intentional about the future and make a better future.
Yeah.
Rather than just sort of going with the flow and going with the least path of the least resistance. I think we've got an opportunity to really think big about making a better life for everybody and better cities for everybody if we seize the moment. And, the things we do a lot of this stop, start, continue workshops with our clients. What do we want to stop in the way we live now?
Right.
I want to stop pollution. I want to save the planet. I want to stop being stuck in traffic. I want to stop commuting with everybody else and in a crowded situation.
Yeah.
I want a better life, work-life balance. I want more time with my family, and I want to be healthier. And I think everybody feels the same way. And I want a much nicer city to live in. Not a noisy, polluted, crowded, unhealthy place. And I think if we start rethinking work, we can really address all of those in a really effective way.
Thank you very much, Ben. I mean, that's it's a really.
If we just keep going on the way we are, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, I would love to echo this, Peter. Like, you couldn't have said it any better. We have a huge opportunity to change the world. I think environmental impact is still so under the radar. I mean, it's in the news everywhere, but like, what are we actually doing? And I think we're at that point where, we can contribute to this. And here's the thing, my takeaway is that we can't go it alone. Yeah. So if I was to, reimagine my own workplace, I'd probably recruit all of you and, half of our participants who are in here today. We have to connect and collaborate and co-create with the right people. Yeah. And that's our own people. That's our own clients. We have to ask our clients as well, what's important to you and how can we deliver a service that's sustainable, but practical. And, we have to co-create and collaborate much more. And therefore we have to keep on developing our people to build effective relationships and have the right conversations. Yeah. And then we have better meetings. Then we create workplaces where, we have better living in better cities. But we have to do this together. Yeah. For me, it's all about collaborating, co-creating, and having the conversations.
Agree.
Yeah, Michael?
I totally agree. We've got a really great opportunity to move ahead and find new ways of doing things for, not just using technology. I mean, I work for a technology company, and I find that the biggest change, technology can do whatever you want as long as you got enough time and enough money. It's the people that have the power to make the positive changes in the world.
And look, I think there's a lot of vested interests that are going to battle any change, quite frankly. And I've talked to you before, Anthony, about the property value of the CBDs as from people actually coming into the CBDs.
Yeah.
No matter what the cost to our cities and our way of life and our quality of life, there is a really big push to get people back to work in the cities.
Well, and there's always the where to put this. And just one thing, I apologize, I haven't been paying attention to the chat, so hopefully other panel members have been chipping into the chat. I've been looking at the Q&A and just realized that we've got a huge chat session going on in the background, which is great. There is nothing wrong with wanting the world to be a better place, right? what is wrong is that if there isn't a roadmap to do it or some specifics. And I think you're quite right that we are, and as Jessica and Lucy and Michael have said, we are at that point where we can impact positively the world at the moment through the choices that we make. Environment, you're right. Who wants to be in that commute? No one. Who does anyone want that?
Nope.
It's a thing that I absolutely don't want, but I do want meaningful interactions. I want that office space to be almost reverential. I don't know what the office is going to look like, but I think it has to be something where we go to participate in that vision and have reverence for what we're doing. And you have to buy into that vision of the company to be able to have that feeling towards the actual goals of the company, and therefore wanting to be in the office to participate in that.
And can I add something to what you just said there, Anthony?
Yeah.
People want to be involved in the solution. So as much as you say, I want to contribute, people in big organizations, small organizations, it doesn't matter where, they want to be heard, they want to have a voice. So make sure that you're creating those environments where people feel that they can make their piece and contribute.
Absolutely. Voice of the customer. And we could say the customer is the staff member in a way. The voice of the client or the voice of the staff member, I think, is critical. And that's where some of these technology tools, and it might be a further discussion down the track about some specific tech that people are using and implementing to ensure that happens.
Yep. And Anthony, we've got 5 minutes left, and we've got a very important part to this webinar, which is
it's over too soon. It's over too soon.
Yeah, it is over too soon, and I'm so happy to see all of the chat going on.
Yeah,
questions.
Pardon me for not contributing to the chat, but it's all going.
Please feel free to, at the end of this webinar, you'll be sent a survey, and it'd be great if you could fill that in. And if you do have any comments or want us to answer any questions, put it in there, and we should be able to get back to you about that. Before we do these raffles, Jessica, do you want to tell us about your book?
Yeah, so I'm launching, it's going to be published mid-September, so it's just an editing stage at the moment. And I wrote this book really out of what happened last year in March, when my world crumbled, my face-to-face business disintegrated, and the world changed. And the book is called Lead the Future, the 12 skills to lead in a fast-changing and ambiguous world. So I'll give a backdrop of what's happening in the world right now, how are we impacted by the 5 megatrends, but also how can we increase team engagement and work in this new world. It's not necessarily a book about the future of work or just the hybrid work. It's about everything. I wrote this for people who work in organizations who want to solve all the issues we talked about today, and what are the actual skills we need to be able to lead through change. Because I tell you what, the one thing is clear: if we can't lead change well, then we're going to have a problem in the next 10 years, because that's the only certain thing. So it's a very practical book with lots of case studies and stories. And
awesome.
I hope it's helpful.
I know it will be. I'm looking forward to reading it. Am I in the draw?
No.
I'll send you a signed copy anyway, Anthony. Don't you worry.
Anthony, I'm going to spin the wheel, but you can call the names out.
Oh, okay, great. We're going to spin the wheel, are we? Awesome.
Yeah, we're going to spin the wheel. Hold on, I'm just going to share my screen so everyone can see this. Yes, we have
the spinning wheel.
How's that?
Look at that.
Screen. Can everyone see? Can you see that, Anthony?
Yes, I can. Click the spin.
So we're going to spin this 10 times for 10 books. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
I'm here. Oop, no. All right, congratulations, Krisha Chowdhury. I think maybe the 10 times is going to be a little bit too much right now. Let's do it a couple of times, then we can spin the rest later.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Do it 3 times. How about that?
3 times.
3 times. All right, here we go.
Paul Gately.
Okay.
So we'll reach out to you after this. Nayara, are you taking these names down? Just check.
Is anyone writing down?
I have written those 2 down.
Excellent. At least someone's on top of it.
Number 3.
All right. Number 3.
Seth, wow.
All right. Done like a dinner game. We'll do the other 7 at a later time.
Yeah, we'll do the other 7 at a later time. We do also have another giveaway.
Oh.
Do you want to talk about that, Jessica? Sorry, Lucy?
Yeah, I was going to,
Yeah. So I work from an ontological perspective, and I use a tool called the Being Profile, which means that it gives you access to how do you relate to different ways of being and how they impact your leadership and your effectiveness of work, like your authenticity, your responsibility, and your relationship to different ways of being. And it's a really cool and deep way of looking at your leadership and how you might be impacting others around you. So my invitation is to take someone through that. If you're interested in increasing your performance, yeah, it will be access to that. I'll give you access to that.
So good luck, everyone, because this is going to be very valuable.
It's valued at $850.
All right, here we go.
It's a big investment of my time. So I hope if you're willing, take it on.
Here we go. To Terrence, it's called Wheel of Names. Who is it? Oop.
Chris.
All right, congratulations, Chris. And we will be getting in touch with you.
Yeah, we'll reach out. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll go back to the Pac-Man.
Go back.
Thank you, everyone, for being on this panel. And thank you all the attendees who, we're blown away by the number of people we had online. So thank you.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy to. I mean, I've enjoyed it. I hope our panelists have enjoyed it. I think we've sort of did what we aimed to do, which was to discuss in a meaningful manner, remote work and the future of work and what's happening, and to be a bit positive about it. You're right. There's a lot of doom and gloom. Thank you for that focus, Jessica. But there's also a lot of positivity. You're right, Lucy and Peter. I think we can make the world a better place. We are at an inflection point, and we can affect very positive change in people's lives. Really happy to see the chat going on in the background. That's totally awesome. I didn't see that until right at the end. Well done on all the people that got stuck in there and involved. And thank you for everyone for attending. And we'll save the chat, I think. Do we? Does that come as part of it? I'm not sure. But we're definitely recording.
There'll be a recording of this coming out as well.
There'll be a recording coming out, so stay tuned for that. And again, thanks for everyone for participating and joining us. Panelists, thank you so much. I thought it was absolutely awesome. I really enjoyed it. I hope you felt the same. And
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, team.
Thanks.
The new world. Let's make it a good one. Yeah? All right.
See you around.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.